thank you, Jigyasa. Um, while my career has been in HR, it's human resources, right? So it's all to do with people, and along the way you study and you're interested in how people behave and what makes them behave that way. Um, in my case, it was very personal, and I came into studying mental health more closely because I have lived experience in the family, and in trying to understand what they were experiencing, or how I could support them better. I came into mental health first aid, really, and that was my in a way a lifeline, because at last there's a way for the lay person. I'm not a mental health professional, so at last here there is a way for a lay person to understand mental health at a generic level, and to actually do something about it. That act, being able to act and do something about it, was a huge part of what drew me to this space, really.
Right, ma'am. So, like, how would you define, like, in human resource using mental health space, and what is your idea? Like, how was, even like you are saying that you had lived experiences. So, what led? Was there any role of gender which was being played there, or it was just
Um,
plain,
Okay, so
not?
my personal experience was not around gender, but along the way, I've understood that so the survey that Harish was talking about, at a global level, we're seeing that 1 in every 100 deaths, right? And we're talking of 2019. The data is of 2019 that we are looking at now. It was the result of suicide. 1 in every 100 are the result of suicide. Okay, 1 in every 100 people who die by suicide. That's what it means. So for me, that was like really shocking. And when you look at the data a little more closely, you see the majority of these deaths by suicide are in low and middle income countries. Okay,
Right.
which is India, and India is one of the more populous of them. China and India are the most populous of the low and middle income countries, right? Going a little further globally, I beginning to understand that the ratio of male suicides compared to female is like almost 2.5 times, and that was another shocking revelation to me. And why? Why is this? Why is there such? When you're saying the population is not so skewed, why is the suicide ratio so skewed? What's going on with men that is driving them to seek such a drastic end to their lives? Why
Right.
are there no solutions? So these are questions that really bother me.
Right. 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 I think we have a very like the perfect person to make us, help us understand this process. With this, I welcome Dr. Sadhna Nattu to this panel platform. She's joining us from Pune. She's an HOD and Associate Director of Modern College, Ganesh Kind, Pune. Right? If I'm right, ma'am. Yeah. So there have been questions raised, ma'am, and you coming from a psychological perspective, and so psychological academia, education system, and working through the idea of feminism and other gender aspects as well. Please help us understand what happens between gender and suicide.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Jigyasa, and hello everyone else on the panel. That's a lot of questions. But first of all, I'll add to my introduction. So, besides being an academician, I'm also a trained clinical psychologist, but I eventually moved on to becoming a feminist psychotherapist. I'm also an activist who engages with advocacy issues for a long time, and a researcher. And I work with youngsters. So we run a peer support unit in my institution, and we have kind of trained a whole lot of people across academic institutions also. I'm sorry, I was slightly delayed in joining due to an institutional meeting, but what I gathered, the previous speaker and what you have asked me, so I'll just flag off 2-3 points, and then I'll take your specific question. So when the previous speaker was talking about the skewed ratio, etc., let's go back to 2014. So 2014, the World Health Organization came out with a report called Global Imperative on Mental Health. And all of you, please take a look at it. And this 2014 report was already predicting India as a hotspot for suicides across ages. So one particular group that was focused on was young adults. So you see that happening as well. If we look at desegregated data, so you see a whole lot of young adults prone to both severe depression as well as suicide. And you see that across genders among young adults. Now, to address this issue of gender, when we refer only to men and women, so we end up talking about cis women and cis men. So interestingly, in India, we have addressed something like farmer suicides because they are a vote bank. All suicides, of course, are a serious issue, but women's suicides have actually been mounting, though data is not showing that properly. Now, this is across, women coming from different demographic, components. There's a question already there, but I'll sort of address that later. So you see that happening with women, so housewives to other categories. But since they are not a vote bank, that has never really been on the agenda. Women as a whole, they don't make a vote bank. So we have to understand that when we are looking at gender and mental health or mental health in general, there are also socio-political dimensions. You can't understand it only as a clinical issue. So what gets reported, what gets addressed, what gets prioritized. Now, during the pandemic, in the last 1.5 years, we see that all marginalized communities, including low socioeconomic strata women, have been the ones who have been suffering from severe depression as well as suicidal ideation and actual suicides. Another thing I want to stress on, that I know we are talking about suicide prevention, but something else I feel very strongly about as a feminist psychologist and psychotherapist, both on the ground and in terms of policy and thinking through mental health, is that we have to address the mental health spectrum, which goes from distress to disorder via attempted and successful suicides. And the distress ratio is really, really large. So even if we forget about COVID for the time being and talk about up to 2020, Jan, there's plenty of data and on the ground evidence telling us that there are a number of distressed persons. And
Yes.
the question that had come in, so I'll just connect that. Men living with severe PTSD in a society, unaware, etc., etc. Yes, so both men and women are, and well, LGBTIQ queer persons. So across the gender spectrum, people are going through this distress to disorder and severe depression, suicidal ideation, suicide, the plethora. What do we really need to look at? That who are the ones who are most vulnerable? And you see low income strata, okay? So, or if you're talking about queer persons, you see the
Yes.
TGs and the intersex, etc., really vulnerable. So the problem is that we tend to, homogenize and look at both data as well as gender and mental health. I think if we want to do work on the ground, we need to stop doing that So statistically or research-wise, we need to look at desegregated data, and on the ground, in whatever capacity with our organizations, whatever our role is, we need to start addressing distress.
Distress.
I think I'll stop here because then maybe one can take up more.
Yes, rightly said, ma'am. Distress is more of right now a global phenomena, global burden, which was prophesized in 2020 10, like 2010, that that global health burden will be mental health issues, and this is the time of transition, like 2020, and we still have 10 years to go, like a decade to reform ourselves, to prevent the distress, to reform. But I'm seeing like some changes are happening. People have started to realize maybe COVID was a call for everything, call for rest, call for urgencies, call for taking care of mental health, realizing, acknowledging mental health. So rightly said that distress has been we are more of a mentally sick society as of now, with more distress people, and distress leads to suicide, which is the ultimate message which is being disseminated through a lot of media, celebrities, and stating that mental health is contagious and suicide is contagious. With this, I will bring my question to Pooja, ma'am. Since she's been quite an advocate about these issues, I would like to ask Pooja, ma'am. She's here, Pooja, ma'am. Yeah, I'm not able to see.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So Pooja, ma'am, as Sadhna ma'am said, and I just add one point here, that if you will see that, like skewedness is towards, we have to have a structure in our society. We can't say that we can't have a structure at all, because too much freedom also makes individuals more dangerous. So we have to keep them somewhere in the structure, so that we can regulate and somewhere or the other we define rules and everything. But in that also, we all, like most of the times we see that people just want to appreciate the fact that how much they're closer to the 100 ideal 100, like they want to lie between the 90 to 100%, whether it's board marks, whether it's achievement in any sense. And the pressure, even if we are seeing from a very long time, like girl education has been increased, and girls have been scoring relatively higher in board exams as well, in education system as well. The ultimate aim just comes to this ground level, that okay, what you have studied, we have like fostered this, now you get married, or now you do this. And again, the situation on male increases, like, oh my god, what should I do? I'm 27, 28, and I'm supposed to be married, but I don't have enough money, I don't have enough savings. So what do you think your ideas and your thoughts on this?
Hello, everyone. I think everybody has kind of summed up all the major points here, but I would like to speak in terms of the violence that is happening around us. And that becomes relevant because when we talk about suicide or mental health, it is not just mental, it is psychosocial. So the social part of it cannot be removed, as have numerous studies have proved. And the social part consists of everything, beginning from how men and women see themselves as individuals, then families, then to larger groups, communities, and society as a whole. And when we think of these various levels of identity, the various intersections that Sadhna ji was talking about, whether it is your gender identity or your social economic status, or it is, whether you are living in a far off rural place or you are in a city, or you can afford a psychiatrist, you have a smartphone and you can use an app or not. So even the digital gap in that way, the experience, so to say, of mental health or overall well-being varies from person to person due to all of these factors. which are not directly related to the mental health or the genetics or the immediate environment of the person, but they are and for instance, right now COVID is also a major factor. The pandemic in itself is a major factor in how women have experienced the pandemic, or how queer people have, or how men have. So the experience, how probably those who are directly related to healthcare have, and those who've been slightly away from it or who have experienced grief have. So there are those various intersections to the distress that Sadhna ji was pointing out, and that distress to disorder journey then gets accelerated or paused or gets intervention and support accordingly. And when I say this, I go back to what we call stigma. And how does stigma work? I think Harish ji was pointing at it in the beginning. There is social and public stigma regarding mental health and suicide for both women and men. So there is this huge, elephant in the room that we do not talk about. Suicides, we know NCRB data is there, but we all know as activists and as researchers that that data is highly underreported. Then there is self-stigma. Because I have been consulting with helplines, I run peer support groups. Sometimes people who themselves have been through suicide attempts, or have even, in the stage where they are in the ideation mindset, they start believing that something is wrong with me. I'm a weaker person, only weak people do this. Because the entire labeling that is happening to us through education system, through media, is that it is cowardice. It is not. It cannot be a social situation. It cannot be a mental health crisis. It is just plain cowardice. Then, of course, there is the kind of discrimination that we can't, take away from it. For instance, even during the pandemic, the lot of calls that were coming to our mental health helpline were actually domestic violence related calls. So the distress was mental, the anxiety was mental, the experience was psychological, but it was stemming from a huge gender divide, and how women were marginalized further due to this healthcare crisis that we were having. And then comes the perceived stigma that often women have. You see the ads on TV. I often quote one in all my talks, which is the woman with 10 hands and she's making 10 dishes for the entire family. Now, those are the expectations that we have from our women. And on the other hand, as Harish ji rightly pointed out, the expectations for men are that they will put a deo, and they will have a relationship, and they will be able to buy big cars and big homes for their families. So it is through media and education system that those kind of rigid gender expectations or stereotypes are being reinforced, which in turn then kind of influence the entire outcome of the entire mental health care system, and for all genders. And this can be men, this can be women, this can be from the queer community. So for everybody, the kind of boxes that we have put, and also again for mental health, I see a lot of people within the community also. There's no work happening in terms of language. There is no work happening in terms of making it reach the last people in the queue. We are only talking in English about mental health in India. So that is also the issue.
Beautifully highlighted, ma'am. Some of the points are very, very important. I do agree that a lot of help is available, but it is only for English speaking and urban society, whereas very less work is happening in the on ground phase. And when we talk of languages, I think there are two people who are working very well in Marathi language, and they are working very beautifully and very very beautifully in this area. Like if we just draw our attention to Sadhna ma'am, she wants to highlight certain view to what you said. Sadhna ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, so responding to what Pooja was saying, let me just map out this intersectionality. For instance, let us talk about caste and gender and depression and suicide. Let's think of class, gender, depression, suicide, distress. These are things that we don't call out. So please, I have recently written a book after lots of other research papers, several kinds of projects. It's called Psychology and Gender, an introduction. It's come out by Sage, and there's plenty. There's stuff on feminist psychotherapy, there is stuff on intersectionality, mental health, and so on and so forth. So please take a look at it. But to quote from all those studies, caste and mental health is a big issue. So when we talk about distress and discrimination, on the ground, there are hardly any mechanisms. I mean, laws are made, they're supposed to be for educational institutions, there is supposed to be SC, ST grievances cell. And to just flag off two important, these are people, to call them cases is terrible, but to flag off these two important episodes. So I'm sure all of you know about both Rohit Vemula as well as Payal Tadvi. Now, these weren't privileged people. So I think we have to also understand, and as she was rightly pointing out, that हमारा सारा जो काम है mental health awareness का, वो बहुत सारी भाषाओं में और अलग अलग cultural components के साथ होना चाहिए. और एक बात मैं बताना चाहती हूँ, हम लोग जो चलाते हैं हमारा peer support group, institutional. So the institution that I work in, we have a complete demographic diversity. We have right from, poor, urban poor to international students. So this peer support group, we use all languages, and it's not just about languages. It's also about understanding the subcultures that exist within countries and elsewhere, because we have international students. And there is a training for these student peer supporters, and then they run the whole show. And they learn from each other that there are multiple realities. So resilience is not one monolith. Neither is distress. It gets spelled out in so many different ways. And to bring in gender here, just to very quickly give a couple of examples. So we've had queer students, coming out, as it were, right there, because it's a safe space. So after they have attended, and this endeavor is called Disha. So after they have attended, say, 6 sessions, they feel some kind of hope and trust. So I'm now, a firm believer. I mean, I'm a practitioner. I practice both, I charge people and pro bono, but it is my firm belief that peer support groups are essential. When we address mental health, the practitioner to population ratio is forever going to be skewed. We are never going to match it. So we need more and more, and all my writings in the last 2 years have also focused on this, that we need people to do more self-care, and we need to, do training of trainers in that on the ground. We need to create communities of care. So this peer support group is also creating a community of care on the campus.
Right.
So
Right.
kindness, compassion, which makes people, which gives them hope.
Right.
We also run a suicide prevention awareness campaign
Wow.
all through various campuses in our university. And that has sort of snowballed because it's participatory. So people don't come and talk about attempts, but they talk about distress, they call out panic, anxiety, because there's less stigma attached to these medicalized labels. And people don't want to really, talk about attempted suicides. But nevertheless, an atmosphere of hope is built. So this practitioner-led kind of a thing, we need to question that also, that we as practitioners know everything. That is not really true. We learn from our engagement, like someone like me learns from her institutional engagement, private practice, movement on the ground, and so many issues that come up. So I think when we break down intersectionality, gender, and prevalence of all these mental health issues, including attempted and successful, death by suicide, we need to factor this in. the social stratifications. So it's not an easy thing, and there is no mantra for everybody. Yeah, so we have to really look at it very, very, closely.
Very beautifully highlighted. Like this is actually something which is a concern which has been come out through COVID, that everybody is getting generalized solutions, which is not the right way. And everybody is like, I do meditation but I'm not getting relief, I'm doing this exercise and everything. So somewhere or the other, I think positive toxicity has gone really high. And I have written a paper on this as well, that positive toxicity is something, hello sunshine, or you're going to have a good day. I think is more calling people out on the fact that what, you're useless, and because of us you're becoming useful, so come to us and attend us. So I think the approaches need to be changed. I think a lot of social media call out happening and everything. Grievance cells, as you said, is very, very I think is the need of the hour, apart from mental health first aid training, QPR training, and then something which is specific to Indian society, I think is missing. Like specific to different culture domains. In fact, only something which comes in to address Indian cultural system, like understanding caste and class and Marxist view and sociological view, I think will be a great opportunity. I think practitioners like you, Harisha and Pooja ma'am, Kavita ma'am, Devika ma'am should sit together and chart out something which can be used with the MHFA approach to expand the idea. I think that's one thing which is very much there. And
I'm sorry, I don't want to kind of hog the space, but I'm so tempted to just take off what Jigyasa was saying about positive mental health. So we have to understand, I mean, I have understood that as an academician and all the other things that I do, and we call it out in our classrooms and trainings, that this thing called positive mental health is a direct, package that has come to us from United States of America.
Yes.
Poor Martin Seligman doesn't know what has happened with the global South. And this is a neo-imperial, neoliberal kind of a thing. And we have to really call it out. I just heard some people, talking about these positive vibes and strokes. They said, अभी कोविड में इतने मैसेजेस आ रहे हैं, मेडिटेट करने को इतना बोल रहे हैं कि करते करते यही निर्वाणा हो जाएगा.
Right.
Are there any quick fix solutions? Hell no, they aren't. We really, really need to take a lot of elephants in the room on board. And the other thing, I think Jigyasa said one more thing, and that is, this product of social media where you have these Instagram influencers. I'm sorry, I'm not in academic space, and I feel like saying, what the hell? An already convoluted world has now been made superly, majorly convoluted. All my post-millennial students, from graduate to the older ones, PhD, they are sending me all this stuff. And I said, who are these people playing around with everybody's mental health and with vulnerable people's mental health? So we have just way too much on our plate, but we need to address it and call it out. I mean, that is another elitist kind of program. I mean,
yes.
Get taken.
Jigyasa.
Yeah, I was coming to Sir only. I want to mention one reference here. So, so there was a video which was going viral in social media where there is a man, and just to gain attention, this man is saying that I'm having fever and everything, and I'm having multiple personality disorder. What is depression? Giving very I would say misinformed information, and way how like I would say Janani women talks. I'm sorry, I'm using this concept, but that's actually true, that they talk in a particular sense, which actually leads to more and more gossip and misinformation spreading around. With this, one is this, and one I want to ask is like Pooja ma'am highlighted the role of genetics. Now, if we see like somewhere or the other, I was reading this, that men today are the weakest, women are more powerful. So I would like to hear your thoughts about on this.
Well, I mean, in the course of our intervention as activists, you will find, even as academicians, like there will be no dearth of people who will be part of this debate, who will keep on telling. But you and I, who work at the grassroots level, and we know, I mean, when it is proved beyond that, gender is a social construct, there will be always somebody who say that there's some research which has shown. I had gone to US for a study through the US exchange program, and I found there were schools in the US, unisex schools only for girls, and the principal actually showed me the various achievements done. And at the end, when I asked them that what could be the reasons why you are having only a girls school, now, I mean, there can be different opinion, but Pat came the reply, isn't it that a girl's brain different from a boy's? Now see, this is coming from the principal of a very elite school. So all other whatever opportunities of growth given to girls, one can understand. But if such is the mind, so there will be people who will dissuade us, and they all know that clinically, that as a research which is scientific, which is done multi-country, multi this, you are not able to prove, genetically also. The research, on the other hand, shows that, that whatever attributes or social characteristics you would give to a man are easily applicable to a woman, and so the other genders. So research is showing that, on the contrary. And, so rather than, I think you and I, we should take up a stand that, okay, that may be a thing, but my experience, my insight shows this, and I know that what is in my hands. See, what is not in your hands, they may put genetics and other things in the guise, but what is in our hands? So, rather than even the words like perpetrators, I'm not comfortable. When you bracket all men for understanding a theory on feminism, it's fine. But there's a word called perpetuators, which I would like to apply to women, because they are perpetuating the system, not out of choice. I understand that very clearly. But you don't put women as perpetuators, right? If you don't call them, so unless and until you and I, work focusedly, because if you know that these are all subject to change, subject to engineering, social engineering, so then you have to work at the level, and I'm telling you, with my 30 years experience among young men and largely adolescent boys, I find that there is a woeful dearth of efforts, of spaces. There are literally young men who are in suffocating molds. They want to outpour their innermost thoughts and anxieties, vulnerabilities. So what I think earlier Pooja was trying to tell, that while on one side there are pressures to perform the roles of a provider, protector, there are also other things like emotional quotient, emotional development is not allowed to develop, as the male child is growing up. So, the moment 13-14-year-old boy starts expressing in detail, he's snubbed in various ways and told, what are you talking like a girl? So I think, you and I have to realize that if we don't, and especially men lack the vocabulary, if I, it's an unusual, it's an example which I gave. Some find it not relevant, but it's true that two unknown women in any journey, whether a train journey, when they meet, they develop a bonding, and they will talk about not just about other things around, but about self. They'll talk about their problems, and leave aside two unknown men. But even two men who call themselves as very close male friends you will find that by and large, this thing is lacking where they can talk about their vulnerability. A married man telling another married friend, today I had a tiff with my wife. Will he tell that? There will be few examples, surely, as exception. But by and large, what does it tell? That men are not supposed to tell these things. Men are able to, because they are result, their end result, be an achiever. How you achieve, that is immaterial. You have to be always a winner, always, so therefore what happens? Rejection, failures, you find these cases of jilted love resulting out of, resulting in cruelty to women and girls, young girls.
Yes.
And in Maharashtra at some point, in the 90s and 2000, there was a spate of incidents, one after the other. So much so that a 45-year-old woman in Mumbai Central, she was working in a Reserve Bank colony. She was subjected to this harassment by a tailor of hers who said that I like you and all. And she clearly mentioned, I'm not interested in marriage. So you find that age and other things are superficial. We may think that they are pretexts, but the real thing somewhere, the gender is playing. Ideas about masculinity is somewhere playing. And you and I, if you don't give especially youngsters the spaces where they can talk, non-threatening spaces where they can talk about their innermost, so if this turmoil is there among youth, where the pressures are on one side and other side, their own ambitions are there, the expectations by the parent to do a particular thing, so I think unless and until there are platforms where they can open up, where they can share, with knowing that there is no vocabulary, and in whatever way they can verbally or in other ways they can articulate. I think, there is a dearth of such platforms, it's a very sad thing, like coupled with lack of sexuality education, you find especially a lot of things, on their chest and they are unable to release. So I'll give you one example just to illustrate. We had this case of Rinku Patil, a young girl from Ulhasnagar, a nearby city to Mumbai, where she was a class 9 student. And there was a guy in a upper class in 10th who was liking her, and she actually declined to his advances and said that I'm not at all interested. And in a classroom full of supervision going on, this man asked everyone to step out, and he burned the classroom with kerosene, and she died. And the next day after this incident, this guy also went on the tracks and committed suicide. So, when we tell the incident or the story, we have to tell this other part equally, that why he did that, because when he did pouring of the kerosene, everybody saw that. And, he must have realized later that, tomorrow if I go to the school, what kind of approach I'll have, what will people say and all that. But that is an afterthought. But what went uppermost in his mind, this possessiveness, the ideas about masculinity, the ideas that I have to win over, conquest. There are enough number of boys, I have come in my work that, if there is rejection, then, I wish I would have had sex with her earlier. These are the thoughts which come and express. So, and it's all coupled with several things, the use of media, the use of films, the messages which they get, So I think toxic masculinity is, I think, which we all have to bring in somewhere or the other. The masculinity which is not there in all men, but if at all it is prevalent in a large number of men, is something which impacts not just the woman and other people in the person's life, but also the men themselves. I think we need to give that context, that how this kind of masculinity is harming you also, in the long run.
Right. So, listening to you, I have got two ideas which I want to One I will be directing to Kavita ma'am, and one I just want to highlight. Like as you mentioned about the school incident, similarly, an incident happened when I was a school counselor. So I did, juvenile counseling, and I was a school counselor as well. Like I did, I wanted to understand that what do school children, like school going educated children, think about. So I got, a job as a school counselor, and where I was trying to protect a young girl, 10th standard, she shifted schools because there was, violation of her identity and everything. So she shifted school, and here also she was mingling with elder,
बिट्टू
boys.
आ गया क्या?
So please, ma'am, I think please mute yourself, Anjum ma'am. Right. So the point is that I was trying to say that I called her in my room. I asked her the questions, and just not like confidential questions. As I asked motivational questions and everything, and I tried to psychoeducate her with very basic, nothing like too much of heavy thing. And I tried to tell her that what basically masturbation means. And the next day, she goes within that evening, I guess, she goes and tells the same thing to the boys involved. And the boys came threatening me that, now you see what will happen to you. You don't know what you have challenged. I said, I'm not scared of you. I know I'm a woman, but I'm not scared of you. Yeah. So in that school, sports had a very high baggage. So they said, no, I'll tell the sports teacher, and then you see what will happen to you. I was like, you go to whoever you want to. I am not threatened by you. Do whatever you want to. And since I was like unshakable, they started, uh, so many things while I was teaching. They used to say comments which were ugly, and throw chalks like or things like paper balls and everything. And then yeah, there was a sports teacher threatening me that if you will not do this, I will do something which is sexually damaging to your image. Thankfully, I got into Nimhans and I got away from that toxic school. But I wrote to the vice principal and I helped a lot of girls because sports teachers used to abuse them and everything. So some girls took some courage and came to me. I said, and I voiced the concern. There were two sports teacher who were expelled from the school and everything. That I'm glad of that I could help, and I did not go without making a change and impact there. But the point was, while the boys were doing these things, the senior teachers were so much in complex that they were supporting those boys. And they were telling me not to do it, and don't take it, otherwise it will be on your reputation. I said, what reputation? If I'm a counselor, I have to deal with these things. And if I don't teach here, then they will be the next criminal sitting in juvenile jail. If you want me to counsel them there, I will be more than happy. If you come, it will be my case money only increasing from the government. I don't have a problem. So the point is that, this fear in women, that no, comply by what men is saying, comply what men is saying. So and then sir mentioned this train journey. So there's a very famous movie, I think everybody would have watched it, about the train conversation, how train journey leads to a new bond, new friendship, and peer support developing. So with directing this to Kavita ma'am, and then opening the question to all panelists to add from their side about what they think, that about internal misogyny, about peer support, like what happened in that movie, what do media really brings in, and what is the idea like. So Kavita ma'am, can we have your thoughts?
Yeah, I want to build a little bit on the points about peer support groups and how this needs to move beyond just the practitioners, right? And of course, I come from more of a corporate perspective, but I think it's important to have that safe space somewhere. And we're talking about the inner circle of your family, or then the next circle of your friends. And I'm probably talking about the even further circle of your colleagues. And you don't have to go to work and say, oh, I'm facing XYZ challenges. But if I know that I have a safe space that I can go to, where I can be myself, I know that I have the support that I need. And either it's in the corporate space or a peer support group, for example, we're just having someone to talk to, right? And having that person being able to understand or at least listen in the right way. That was one of the major reasons that drove me towards the MHFA training as well. I had a friend who was suicidal, and I thought that I was fairly self-aware about mental health, and I've gone through lived experience myself, but I didn't know how to react at that point, right? And if you think about it, each of us as individuals, it's so difficult to actually talk about this. And it's easy to say, talk about it to someone, right? But when someone did talk to me, I didn't know what to do. So we need to equip more and more people as well to have these conversations, give them the vocabulary they need, make them more aware of the reality, and that there's no shame in talking about this as well. And yes, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the media portrayal of mental health. There is a lot of work to be done, right? And it's not just Indian media; it's international media as well, right? There's either caricaturization of illness, or people with mental health are automatically the bad guy. They're the villain in the story, and
the extreme good guy.
Or the extreme good guy, right? Or you're overcoming all your hurdles and you're suddenly saving the world, right? And the savior have overcome. So it's not that simple, and it's not that black and white. So yes, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the media. In the organization where I am working, I can talk about a little bit of the work that's being done, where we're trying to create more awareness amongst the content creators, right? So you are the people responsible for putting these stories out. So either are you consulting with the right people? Do you have people with the experience to talk about the story, right? Whether it's gender, whether it's mental health, any of these constructs, right? Are you telling an authentic story? Or is this something that you're making up in your head from what you've seen, maybe in other movies or maybe in society, right? So that is some work that is being done. We're also working on bringing in a lot of experts in this space to make sure, like I said, the stories are being told authentically. We're also doing a lot of work on the internal culture of the organization as well. And again, going back to Sadhana ma'am's talk of safe space, we do safe space conversations. We've had some very, very powerful ones. People have resources available. We have an employee assistance program. We have psychologists available on call. But people aren't ready to go to those resources as yet, right? I'm not going to call up the phone. I don't know whether tomorrow they're going to go and tell my manager or my employer that I called and said, I have this challenge. And again, going back to this, the point of being bulletproof, right? But within the organization, I think there have been small pockets. It's still very small. We've been able to create a safe space, and through that safe space, really create a little more awareness. It's baby steps, it's small steps, but once we make our content creators more sensitive, more empathetic, more understanding of the situation, I think that's how more authentic stories can come out in media as well. So that's a big effort.
I think one of the, I can see the result in one of the stories being very popular and doing very good. And it talks about women health, women status, and that's very good. I have written an article about that as well, because I remember, my sister got diagnosed with cyst, and we did not know what was cyst all about. Everybody was just commenting she's gaining weight, this and that, and just there and then we get to know that okay, she has cyst, which is so big that if we not operate, she'll be gone. And it was immediate surgery, and we had to check for cancer and everything and all that stuff. And when the similar issue was highlighted in one of the shows, I think that was a great step. I think that increasing of vocabulary and awareness of what goes through inside a woman's body is very, very, very important, which was very much highlighted. And congratulations for that as well. That is like a brilliant step which was taken from on that. Drawing from this, and since Pooja ma'am had mentioned certain points here, genetics and role of women. So yes, there was a spike in domestic violence, and surprisingly if you see, most nurses are women. we have very less male nurses. So COVID was, if you see, showcasing a dual side of women where, because of manning up the man, the result was on the women being harsh. But with the same man going to the hospital and again relying on certain women to be taken care of. What would be your thoughts on that, Pooja?
Yeah, Jigyasa, I'll come to this, but I kind of made a word cloud when everybody was talking, and I think these points need to be highlighted. Will you please allow me to share my screen? I need to show something.
Sure.
Yeah, please allow me. So yeah, if you've seen, some of you might have seen the documentary India's Daughter on the Nirbhaya rape before it was banned in India. If you see that and you realize how toxic masculinity and the whole notion of men being so important to families and organizations and the entire culture of silence around their behavior works, is the one of the the rapist sister saying that my brother is not a bad man, she must have done something to make him do what he did. And that is how it works. And a lawyer of the Supreme Court saying women are like a flower and they must be planted in a pot. Those kind of things are said about a case that had the entire nation raging. Imagine what kind of things are being said about one case in some rural household. No support, they don't get any support at all. So that is one. Then coming to language, trust you me, before the mental health care bill, the act came in 2017, me and a lot of activist friends, we have struggled and struggled for 10 years to make people not use the word committed. And it is still being used even by people within the mental health community. They do not understand the implications, how we criminalize this entire notion of suicide. So they don't understand, in spite the law. There's a law now which says that this is wrong. There are WHO guidelines, there are press council guidelines. These are not people who are unaware or uneducated. They are mental health editors and health reporters of the best websites and portals and newspapers. And we have to be after them just to delete this one word. So that is one thing. Another thing, yes, when we talk about vocabulary, the vocabulary for mental health, what is the vocabulary we are using? The vocabulary we are using is often of shame, is often of fear. And when we talk about these shame and fear things, where are they coming from? They are coming essentially, from this notion of gender as if you see my screen now, these pictures have been taken from rape cases across media, and these are all from mainstream media in India. Who is being shamed? Who is the one covering the face? This has been one of my initiatives along with other activist friends. And what are the messages we are giving to young boys? If she is raped, she should be ashamed. She should hide her face because boys will be boys. So we do not realize that even that one picture of a woman hiding her face is giving a deep-rooted message about gender, mental health, suicide, shame, fear, stigma, and all of that plethora of everything to young boys and girls. And when we come to genetics, I am a parent, a biological parent in India, but I'm sick and tired of the glorification that we put on the Indian mother. We believe कि उसमें special कोई अलग एक chip लग के आया. There's one extra chip in Indian women to be the mother India. And that role, we not only confine to biological mothers or women we expect to be mothers, sisters, daughters, everything else. We expect nurses to be mothers. We do not see a lot of women doctors out there. We will see less male nurses because caring, sacrificing, cleaning your shit is what women do, is what mothers do. So those are cultural perceptions. I teach in medical colleges, I teach disability etiquette. So I deal with future doctors. And I know that in spite of these hospitals having the best of psychiatry departments, and as Kavita was saying, in-house support and groups and whatever, these doctors, these boys and men and young women, like we had the sad case of Payal Tadvi, they do not have the safe space to go to find some kind of, support there within their organizations if there is something like bullying happening, which is not only based on gender but caste, also class, also the color, also probably you come from a tribe, you eat, you look different, you eat different. So in India, the discrimination goes very deep into what you eat, what you, how you know. So there are so many layers to this entire thing about, believing that there are particular genetics. And similarly, the other part of genetics is, I have dealt with parents in my, my other work related to disabilities and otherwise, where parents, there is a child, clearly the child psychologist, the psychiatrist have seen the child, and they see that there is a, suppose there is an intellectual disability. The parents say, हमारे खानदान में तो कोई पागल ही नहीं है, हमारा बच्चा कैसे पागल हो सकता है? So those are the kinds of biases that are coming about, and these are not misinformed people, trust you me. These are very well informed people who have access to internet content, who can hire an expensive psychiatrist and a pediatrician, but they still think that if there is an intellectual disability, or if a child stammers, or if a child has anxiety, or if your child says I am non-binary, if your boy says I like boys, then there is that is a defected piece. वो गड़बड़ हो गया है. That is the perception. So this normalization has to begin in families. It has to begin from there.
Right. Right. Devika ma'am, I'll come to you in a minute. It's actually 5:21 and Harisa might have to leave by 5:30 because of the second session. So I would like the floor is open to you and your resigning comments and remarks and your insight of MAWA as well, like what training happens and on ground result that is there.
You're on mute, sir.
So, I find with the pandemic last 1.5, 2 years, I think, one should realize that this gives us an opportunity, especially for men, to reassess the gender relations, what has been so far existing, and, unlearn, learn, all that. So therefore, one can also see that the disproportionate amount of burden on urban working middle class women have risen so much, apart from the spike in domestic violence and all which was told. So I think it's important, and you find that there are few examples of men who have been at home and doing household chores, spending some quality time with children, but those numbers are very few. We need to, I think, in various ways, bring this to the attention of the men around. And, while asserting women themselves about their rights, it's important that to bring men and boys in the conversation, So just now Pooja was talking about normalization. So normalization of violence, when it happens, whenever there is talk about gender-based violence on women, the extreme forms of violence or the examples of mass rape and molestation, and in the last few years about sexual harassment has been talked about. But what about daily misogyny, daily sexism? A simple example like, somebody getting a message on their WhatsApp, which is demeaning to women, derogatory to women, all of us, including women and girls who get those messages, very well know who is the sender. But how many of us give a befitting response to the sender telling that henceforth, if you send such messages, I will unfriend you? What does it require? A call to action, at your own individual level. It doesn't require the effort of an NGO or a government or anyone else. If by you remaining silent and mute spectator, you are adding into the normalization. So I think a lot of onus on the wider society at large. Incidents of violence are on the rise, and especially in full public, you find that this mute spectatorship, the bystanders approach, and you is on the rise. And unless men and others become upstanders and stand up for the rights of whoever, basically a human being more than a gendered being, that in front of you there's something wrong which is happening and you remain mute spectator. So I think one has to, while simultaneously working at a prevention level, we must understand that in young boys, ideas about empathy and respect, so I always make a statement which is not liked by many, that respect for a woman's body, respect for a woman's thoughts is never automatic. It's a learned behavior. And if it's a learned behavior, what have you and I have done to ensure that that learning takes place among growing up boys while raising them? So I think that is solely missing. So you do not have conversations about, leave aside about consent when he is around 18 and above, but ideas about what is consent and what are the things you aspire in life. You do not get everything what you aspire. If that message goes to growing up boys, he will be able to accept the rejection of a woman as well as he grows up. But if he, provided he has got ideas about consent and dissent in other things in life, everyday things in life. So these are small steps, but practical steps, taking a proactive stance. Girls say that, in college campuses, we talk everything under the sun. My question is, do you talk about contemporary gender happenings with the closed men in your life? Do you talk this with your close male friends? Do you talk with your male colleagues at workplace? So I find this is, unless you see that it is others' problem and not yours, I think unless proactive efforts are made by people, at the ground level, then only you will find the change happening. So I think I'll stop here, because I would end with saying that healthy conversations are the key to a healthy society. And for that, everybody has to be part of the conversation, including men. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm sorry I have to rush. There's another seminar happening, as was introduced. While introducing, around 20 people across the globe are talking about something which is called anti-gender movements. And I'm part of the dialogue, and today is the last day. So from 5:30 to 9:30, I'm taking part in a very interesting kind of thing, that all those actors who are against gender ideology and against women and against LGBTQI persons, there's a huge effort happening worldwide. And if we have to counter that,
Oh my God. Yeah.
Imagine, there's
more power to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the.
We faced a lot of backlashes, and this is one more. Please tell me more about it when you're done.
So, thank you so much, Jignasa and team, for all this opportunity. Thank you.
So this was very insightful and we loved having you. Moving to Devika ma'am. Yes, I'm sorry I had to cut down on that thought. Please share it. Please share it.
No problem at all, Jigyasa. I'm glad we got to listen to Harish before he had to go. because there's a lot of passion there, and I really hope that the lever he is using changes the way people look at things. So I just wanted to bring our focus back to the topic in terms of suicide. And I think from all the discussions that we've been having today, and everybody's really brought to the front that not all suicides are a result of mental illness, right? In fact, the data shows that only about 20%, approximately, is what seems to be mental illness. Most of it is social causes and cultural causes, and your family issues, your financial issues, relationship issues, inability to deal with things that are happening in your social circles, our society's lack of ability to accept sexual identities and give safe spaces is talked about so much. And I think that's a huge part of it, right? We don't feel safe sometimes even within our own families to talk about it, right? About things that are bothering us. Why I'm sort of just putting all this together is because it's becoming apparent, right, that while there is death, suicide though is preventable. So my point here is that if we can prevent that life being lost, what is it that we can do? What is it that we as lay people can do, right? There is Dr. Sadhana had talked about the WHO guide, right? They have something called the Live Life Implementation Guide for Suicide Prevention. Okay, and they have described 4 really effective evidence-based ways to prevent suicide, really. Okay, and they're really practical. So one is just limit access to how people die by suicide. Limit access to firearms. Limit access to harmful pesticides and things like that, by which many farmers do take their own lives. Yeah. How do you get adolescents, children who are growing up, to have better socio-emotional skills? How are they able to express themselves better and make it okay for them to express themselves? Yeah, that was the second one. And the third one was media. And Kavita, I think you made a very good point there, right? Where we're talking about responsible reporting. Yeah, here, in a very narrow way, responsible reporting of suicide is what the WHO has said, but responsible reporting overall. Yeah, how does media bring this to the public? And the fourth one, and I've kept this for last to talk about because it's certainly not the least, is is there a way we can identify, is there early identification of somebody who's affected by suicidal ideation or behaviors? Yeah, and what do we do? So how can we act? How can we strengthen our own knowledge and skills in order to prevent suicide? And this, I think, is critical for us now if we are looking at saving lives, which need not be lost, right? So I guess all of you know that MHFA has a suicide prevention course. It's a half-day program. And basically what it does is it teaches practical skills and just increases us, as Kavita said, you're so nervous as a lay person to talk about suicide to people, right? But it gives us lay people that confidence. It gives us the vocabulary that Pooja was talking about, to talk about it. Yeah, and that improves your confidence, and you can apply those skills to somebody who may be feeling so low or so much in distress. And I really, somebody had commented that distress is not all there is, but distress is what drives people to such desperate measures. That's the level of pain that I am experiencing, right? The level of hopelessness, the level of helplessness, the level of just, I can't bear this anymore. And this seems to be the most immediate and effective way out at this point in time. Can we show them other ways to cope with that pain? Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I want to sorry Jigyasa, I want to talk about one thing here, and I would really request Dr. Sadhana to help us understand it a little better, which is non-suicidal self-injury. Okay, so that I find that so many youngsters nowadays, when they have not completed the act of suicide, there is so much of non-suicidal self-injury, and the people inflicting it upon themselves don't understand it. Parents don't understand it. Friends don't understand it. So, if Dr. Sadhana could help us understand that a little more, because I think non-suicidal self-injury leads to suicidal ideation as well. So if you could just help us understand that, ma'am.
Jigyasa, should I take my turn?
Yes,
What
ma'am. I was just, right. I was just continuing. Yes.
So just too many thoughts, because whatever different speakers were saying, alag file khul gayi. So I have a little point for whatever people were saying, and that's because I guess I'm probably the oldest on the panel, next to Harish. So about 32, 33 years of work. I'll come to that later, but I'll respond to what Devika was saying first. I completely agree that the first point of intervention has to be distress. That's what we have been doing institutionally also. We also use MHFA for training of our faculty and various people in our institution. That is pretty helpful and practical. I think that's a good format to follow. I don't like some of the language WHO has used, gatekeeping, etc., but we can forget that and use the practical templates. So that is really, really useful. So one more preventive aspect is building this community of care. Once I brought out peer support, I think every participant responded from their own ecosystem, how they are also trying to build this safe space and peer support. So whether it is corporate, academic institutions, or simply poor communities are doing really, really well. I work with several grassroots level organizations that are working on both gender issues as well as mental health in various capacities. And I see them because, they are in some ways more organically connected than the rest of us, urban, upper middle class people. So they somehow very organically, and even in COVID, they have done better. And their lack of access is definitely there. So the money is not there, but the bonding has always been there. They don't lead individual atomic lives. So we need to learn a lot from them as well. And there are a number of organizations across India, and you all can look at their work. In fact, a recent thing is the mental health division of the WHO. I have problems with WHO as a body, but the mental health division of WHO has just come out with some wonderful documents where these case studies from the global south have been showcased for the first time. They are also shifting from biomedical to social
culture,
psychosocial,
whatever,
I don't want to say thank God, but thank all the elements that are there. So please take a look at this material. I can send it to Jigyasa. She can email those links. So that is to respond to the interventions and strategies for stuff ahead. And I think there, because the person who leads the mental health division, she comes from a law, psychology, gender studies background. So they're really doing well. So you all can take a look at that material. We have been using it. I have in some ways been a part of that. Now to respond to non-suicidal self-injury. Yes, for quite some time, especially with young adults, the self-harm practices are pretty visible. But I see a lot of complexity around that. First factor is, of course, family dynamics. Family is the most contested site. Youngsters across strata are not happy within families. So as part of, this free therapy groups during COVID, and the way these youngsters, whether they were poor, middle class, or slightly better off, they're not used to staying at home. They're not used to being with their own families. They spend maximum time out. And that has brought on a lot of distress because COVID has brought it out. So this is, like a penultimate step. So we know that suicide is a cry for help. Similarly, this self-harm is also a cry for help. It may not result in drastic measures. So they are really calling you out. And I, see patterns of family as a conflicted side. Yeah, because some of the others, socialization practices come from our families. Extremely competitive, comparing your own kids, having so many expectations, not standing with them, and especially if they are disabled or queer, or say or do things which you may not like. So family is one. Occupations and their own hope and aspirations is one more driving factor. So you see this, and we have to factor all those, precedent, antecedent factors in. So when you all are doing your MHFA training, you all have to, look at, there's a lot of material now. You can look at patterns. There are rural patterns, there are semi-urban ones, people who are in education and out, and for all ages. So I would tell you all to, look at that. Now, very quickly, some of the things that several people were saying. So very interesting. I think Pooja was talking about that. So my PhD, which is pretty dated, some things have changed, was on motherhood and male gender roles. Okay. Yeah, some things have changed. Some socialization practices, the stereotypes, etc., are changing, I must say. I need to be charitable and a little hopeful. But we haven't made those, strides that we were supposed to make. Yeah, so I did this work 25 years ago, and I've been working ever since. And I see real baby steps even now. Yeah, so those male gender roles, now we have toxic masculinity to take that also on board. And motherhood, glorification of motherhood, all of that still continues. The forms have changed, but the potent thing of motherhood has not changed. That is just to respond to Pooja. You might like to take a look at my work and see how things, whether they have changed or not, whatever is your own opinion. Then Harish opened another file that took me way back. I began my work in the women's movement as a young collegian. We ran this group called Sadhyoti Manch, and my journey with the women's movement started at age 18, and I'm a very strong member of Srimukti Andolan Sampark Samiti, which is a network of women's organizations across Maharashtra. So this, we called our campaign No Right to Say No. So when there is this boy attracted to a girl, yeah, and I prefer calling it one-sided attraction and not one-sided love, because love is not one-sided. It is definitely mutual. So this one-sided attraction, and in Maharashtra, starting from Rinku Patil to 2000. So Rinku Patil was late 1980s to 2000, and that has not stopped. It still continues. So you see that patriarchy is putting pressure on both the boy and the girl. Yeah, the boy has not learned to take a no, and the girl doesn't know how to clearly say no. And you see those strands seeping into sexual harassment. I work on that as well. So sexual harassment is at the workplace. You see that within, we don't call marital rape, right? So you don't see those strands even within so-called conjugal families. So this entire thing, of various ways in which masculinity, patriarchies get constructed. And I agree with Harish, and I have done some work with groups like Mava and others in Pune who are working with young men as well. Okay, so young men, particularly poor young men, in this post-globalization context, are left with very little choices. Yeah, so there also you see a mental health burden. definitely, because their aspirations are high, but they're not able to afford or do the things that upper middle class and upper class young men are doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
And just to, yeah,
reports
just,
of, yes,
yeah, just to very quickly tie that up with, because Pooja mentioned Nirbhaya, currently we at Sri Mukti Andolan Sampark Samiti, this work doesn't stop. I mean, I'm a third wave feminist starting early 90s, and this work doesn't stop. So that messaging has to continue. So currently we are working on strategies to, somehow respond to the Mumbai gang rape case. And there now, we are also trying to bring our friends like Harish, and there are several in Pune, like I said, who are working with young men. Yeah, because it's very important to work with both genders, because there's this aspect of violence and mental health here. And somehow we are not able to see the impact of patriarchy on young men, and we have to respond to that, because there is a mental health dimension, there is an intervention for against violence as well. So yeah, so to conclude, in terms of interventions, I think distress needs to be addressed. There are very few distress scales or tests or tools. We need more from the Indian context. And then building different kinds of peer support groups, using mental health first aid, acknowledging intersectionality, gender, mental health issues, not just talking about a certain strata and talking about cis persons on one hand, and forgetting caste and class. And in Payal Tadvi's case, there was no male involved. These were two women, and everybody ended up saying that Payal needed counseling. So we are a part of that petition. Okay, so her mother, she was a tribal, the first, a Muslim tribal, first from her community to become a doctor, an MBBS, and in this great hospital in Mumbai, the upper middle class persons who stayed in the same hostel room with her gave her such undignified treatment. And the mechanisms, so anti-ragging, anti-grievance, nothing was functional. And people are saying she needed help. No, it's these other two who needed help. That how do we, so that is again happening. So you see a lot of mental health burden on the marginalized persons, because the rest of us refuse to treat them with dignity. And as I think I took on too many things because I was so tempted to respond, because I work in various capacities. And yeah, please read my book because it covers many points. The last one about genetics. So there's a lot of work, and I have quoted that. And please use those solid arguments wherever you need. Some are mine, some are other researchers, which give you everything at one go. So please take a look at the book. It is meant for all kinds of persons working on gender issues in different ways. It's not just meant for academicians, researchers, blah, blah. So please look at that book and use it and tell me if you find it useful. All right, I think
so Sadhana ma'am has brought in very beautiful points, which two majorly that I want to highlight. Is one, that education is always met with resistance. So educated will think that they are progressed, but they will actually pull back the other people. They will regress back, and they will think that, okay. So I think this education system is so European in style that we need to break down and reform the whole idea to inculcate a sense of belongingness. The other thing, yes ma'am, I agree with you, WHO is very faulty, and I do not completely agree with all the work. Like simply saying, okay, if I'm sorry, Devika ma'am, this might be a little, conflict of interest, but just putting a person away from the, things which can cause harm is not an option, because he or she has to work with it every single day. Now, for example, a knife. I have to cut the apple from this, from the same knife. I have to cut food from the same knife, and So same knife can be useful in
Jigyasa,
cutting.
my point there was not that you don't use it, that you don't have access to it when you are in that
Yes.
frame of mind. So if I take it home with me and I'm alone at home, right,
Yes.
then I have access to something that can cause me harm, right? So
You
that
know,
was the
that's
thing.
why conflict of interest, that is what I'm saying, that for Indians, I think this is very individualistic thoughts. The idea is that we need to use our strength point, that is collectiveness, the idea of collectiveness. So don't leaving the person alone, so that in fact feeding with the same knife, in the sense that, you know, cutting an apple and feeding that person will be more responsible in that situation. And WHO is working on the individualist idea of European and American and other ideas. So Asian as a community as such is very put off. So like I agree, a lot of people do agree like WHO is a highest point in everything, but I personally do, like doing my personal research around society prevention as well, I feel a little conflict of interest. In fact, I remember that we had used this approach of open mic or spoken word poetry just to help, and using the psychodynamic approach, because poetry is a form where art in any form will be psychodynamic approach coming out, your internal thoughts, your trauma and everything coming out in a one space, whether it's art, poetry, whatever. So we had used this open mic forum or spoken poetry forum to bring out that safe space where people were just sharing poetry and feeling so safe about themselves, that there was a place in a mental health setup that they could speak their poetry out. So that's the whole idea. Whereas wherein MHFA, like Devika ma'am, we can highlight how we do the safety planning, which is very, very important. Like, what are the dimensions that we do so that the person himself and the other person, like together, can participate in this process and make a safety plan ready, so that if the person is in danger or is in a situation where it is causing crisis, so that person can address those points. Devika ma'am?
Yes, Jigyasa.
So safety
Right.
plan. Safety
Oh,
plan.
I thought you went through it well enough, so I was not
No,
adding to it. So just to talk a little bit about the safety plan. So typically in the MHFA action plan, one of the things we endorse is teaching the first aider what one needs to do to keep the person safe. So at the end of the day, that's the idea, right? But once you are able to understand that the person is suicidal or is thinking of suicide or wants to end their life, finding ways to keep them safe. And obviously, this finding ways to keep them safe has to be done with them. They have to want to be safe, right? So in the building of the social safety plan, we basically look at working with them to put down what are the resources that are available to me to keep me safe. Yeah, what are the things? Who would I call? What are the things that I would do rather than the things I will not do? So you look at the. I'm sorry about all that. This is also a positive, on the side of positivity, but get them to think of what are the things I will do to keep myself safe. Or when I'm feeling distressed, or when those ideations are very, very strong, what are the things I would do? And why we encourage them to write it down is because when you're in that state, your brain doesn't work, right? And if you have this somewhere, I've written it down somewhere and I can look at it. So you look at it and it tells me, okay, what did I say I would do? I said I would call so and so, and these are the people I can call and I can talk to, and these are the numbers. Oh, I've written them down. I don't need to remember. It's there. Yeah. What are the things I will do? Like, when I'm feeling very distressed, maybe things that actually do calm me down. Some art, some going for a walk, some particular exercise. Staying sober, not going out drinking with my friends. Things like that. Yeah. And the last thing in that safety plan is we talk about a time frame. So how long am I coming? This is not like an indefinite plan, right? I want to put this plan in place for the time that I am feeling vulnerable and distressed. Yeah, so let's say the next 1 week or so, or the next 4 days or so, and then we check in again with them. Yeah, so that you're giving them tools basically to do something about their own vulnerability and distress. Yeah, and creating that safety plan. So hopefully it works for more people than not, but we found it very useful and practical.
Yes, ma'am. So Sadhna ma'am has a point to add through. She's been tempting enough, so you can see.
Yeah, no, because I thought that there is all this wonderful material and you all should take a look at it. So the WHO new guidelines called quality rights. I was a part of the committee from India where they had asked for suggestions. This entire process was on from 2016 and it has come to fruition now. You will find wonderful documents from the global south. So India, several South Asian countries, etc., on suicide prevention as well. These are case studies, experiential learning that activists, researchers, practitioners have put together. So please take a look at it. And for you, Jigyasa, so they had different people from these organizations speaking. I think it must be uploaded because some of us were invitees, so we could attend it. It was fantastic. And this great woman is Dr. Michelle Funk, whom I was discussing.
Yes, I heard about
wonders in the last 5 years because she's brought the global south perspective. She's brought the psychosocial distress perspective. So at least the mental health division of WHO is rocking right now. And Jigyasa, the presentation also had a user, somebody with lived experience, a beautiful song as well, which conveys how you shift from hopelessness to hope, and you have, the agency where the so-called suffering person actually has a lot of agency. So the entire thing is really, really well done. And since so many people are there, I thought I couldn't stop myself that let me give you the exact details. So please take a look at it. It's available on the WHO website. Some of us got it in August, then July, when the actual program happened. But I think they've put up almost everything. But if you don't find all the material, this is my mail ID. Please feel free because it is for dissemination. It's not just for select few. So if you don't find everything because I've not, since I got it myself, I haven't lately checked out the website. But if you all don't find everything there, please feel free to contact me. I'll share the material with you all. This is one of my mail IDs. So I've shared it here.
Sure. I think Kavita ma'am would have some points to add here where she can speak from, how these resource material will be more adding value to the human resource space that she's trying to, curate in her workplace and other areas as a snowballing effect, since ma'am mentioned. Kavita ma'am, what will be your resigning thoughts?
Absolutely. And I saw that someone made a comment about...
I'm sorry, may I take your leave? Because I have an online therapy session and I have been working from 8 in the morning. And since I'd promised Harish and Jigyasa, I got free early and I could join you all, but I have to
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much, all the panelists. Sorry, I have to leave. And thank you, Jigyasa.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I saw that someone put in a comment there about career stress as well. And I think, again, building on everyone's points around building more awareness, just building that vocabulary, normalizing conversations, whether it's the workplace or even outside, even in my circle of friends, how can I normalize this conversation? And do I have the confidence to do that? And I think Devika was talking about confidence. And for me personally, I think the MHFA course, one big thing that it did for me immediately was that it built up my confidence to really start talking about it. And each of us as individuals, we can create those ripples, right? And it moves outwards and it moves outwards. And I think some of these resources definitely would be excellent to look at All of us need guidance, need pointing in the right direction when we're not professionals. And I think a lot of us want to educate ourselves as well. That's why a lot of you are here as well. That's why I'm here. We all want to learn more and learn how we can really cut this at the root, and about talking about distress and how do we prevent maybe even getting to that stage, or when we are at that stage, how do we identify it and stop the progression at that point. So yes, I think resources is important. As an HR person in the organization, I work not only on wellness, but also on diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. So a lot of these conversations around gender, around sexuality, the pride community, the queer community, and so on. So a lot of these things, and now more recently, mental health coming into the forefront as well. People want to share, people want to talk. They want to have a safe space where they can have a conversation. We just need to enable that for them, whether it's the workspace, whether it's outside, whether it's the family. And ma'am was talking a lot about family, and I think that's the foundation. Which if you don't get that right, then you're messing things up right at a very early stage. And again, I have lived experience of that, I must say. So, are we empathetic enough to have those right conversations as leaders, as managers, as friends, as family, husbands, wives, parents? Do we have the right vocabulary? Do we have the empathy? Do we have the right skills to even just listen to understand and not to solution? And that's why I think a lot of forums like this, resources that are available, are always excellent to have. We need to have more and more conversations around this space. And I think there's never enough that we can do to create more awareness, to create more comfort around the space of mental health. There's so much stigma around it. I think we just need to talk about it a lot more to make sure that people are not afraid to reach out for help.
Right.
Thank
right.
you, Jigyasa.
Right, beautifully pointed out that, and that's what the theme of this suicide prevention is, as a prevention month, is that we should create more hope through action, and this action is to talk in a safe space. I think that is wonderfully put out, and that's exactly what my piggy bank of hope is. Just like how we used to save money since the start of from the, if you are from the 90s, you must relate to this idea. Whenever somebody used to come, they used to give money. So our parents used to say, don't spend it now, keep it in your piggy bank, it will be helpful later. And we used to get irritated that why they're not letting us go and buy a packet of chips and everything. So that exactly, instant gratification of everything, and getting it into piggy bank and making a saving to use at the right place, saving your energy, restoring your energy sometimes is very, very important, which is very beautifully highlighted by you, ma'am. And that's really great thoughts. Moving to Pooja, ma'am, your resigning thoughts. And I know you have lots and lots of them, but I think we would request ma'am to have a special session with you, though. Don't take it in an otherwise manner, but I love your thoughts because you're upfront and straightforward, and you're like, this is the problem, where is the solution? Now we have to generate the solution. Yes.
Thank you, Jigyasa. So yeah, a long discussion can be had with Devika another time about removing of memes. Of course, it's a very effective way of preventing suicide, and as you rightly pointed out, it comes informed from the first world, where the leading cause of suicide is guns. So it is very easy to lock the guns away or keep them away. Whereas if we are talking in a gender informed way, or I will speak specifically in terms of the housewife suicides in India, 50% of all those suicides go unreported. One of the major, and they are dowry deaths. Some of them are because of dowry, because there has been harassment of dowry. So the real cause is not a mental health issue, it is dowry. And the parents also hide it. So the parents will never report it. And then in India, there was this study conducted by TIS again, busting the kitchen accident myth, case of burn injuries in India, which found that a lot of those burn injury cases were actually suicides. So in India, it is a very different social dynamic that we have to consider. Also, MHFA and I have been after Erinda, this should be in multiple Indian languages now. High time we stop speaking about and imparting the training only in English. I also do psychological first aid, and I have trained at various forums. And I met nobody who was doing it in India other than in English. So it has to be, one, done in diverse languages. Two, it has to be informed by gender. For instance, in our helpline, we had calls where women callers would not want to speak to a male responder. And that is again very cultural. They would want कि मुझे औरत से ही बात करनी है, मुझे आदमी से नहीं बात करनी. So we'll have to work on those barriers as well. And again, the entire pyramid of mental health care that is completely missing in India, starting right from the family, as Kavita mentioned, because that is your first social group. And then, of course, peer support that we bring. Again, peer supports have to be diverse across genders, across language, across regions. They have to be accessible, free. And then, of course, things like helplines. Now, we had to be after the government to get one done, and that we know how well it works. And in India, we do not have still helplines in all languages. That is another thing. And we do not have a suicide helpline. We do not have a suicide prevention policy from the government. So those are policy things again. As far as those of us commoners getting trained, I think one thing that commoners and also people working in gender and mental health space need to work on and can easily learn is language. And one word to drop is committing suicide. Please drop it. Every time somebody uses it, I cringe. I actually cringe in my chair.
I'll tell you what is the reason behind it.
Yeah, just set that context. Thank you.
I'll give you this idea. So why people say commit suicide or why it came into practice was the idea that so humans have this tendency that once they have to, if they start something, they have to end it. And if they aren't able to end, there is something called Zengrick effect, which keeps on, hovering over that, okay, I'm not done this, I'm not done this, I'm not done this, I'm not done this. So with pain as well. And now this is not like one cycle that goes through the life. It's multiple simultaneous cycles that go through it. So once it happens, like, okay, there are so many cycles which are open and one leading to another messed up thing, but another messed up thing, another. So piling up the garbage. So any new garbage, what will happen that, no, I can't take it anymore and I have to commit and close. So committing to the idea that I have to close is basically the idea to commit suicide. That I'm committing to the idea of losing my life since I don't have any option to go anywhere.
Well, as a linguist,
I'm going to
I
just
can
interrupt there. Sorry, Pooja. Just want to, put the context there in terms of the language. When you're saying commit, and I completely agree with Pooja that we should not be using that word. But the reason we should not be using that word is because it was considered a crime until the Mental Health Care Act of 2017 decriminalized suicide. And
yes,
every time we say the word commit, we are endorsing that it is a crime. Therefore, we should stop saying it. And yes, it's difficult because it's a habit and we have grown up with that language. But I still say it, I say ka, and then I sort of take a step back and say died by. Yeah, so it's a habit and you need to lose the habit. There are some habits we need to lose.
Yeah, I mean, I have also
I just want to put that on
using the word commit, but I also unlearned it. So I'm a living example that it can be unlearned. And it is not only coming from the psychological point, Jigyasa, as a linguist, I can tell you, it also comes from the fact that a lot of religions and sects and communities believe that it is a sin to kill yourself. And even to have a thought to harm yourself or kill yourself is a sin. So you are doing a crime. So, the entire idea of crime is related to it. So hence, of course, we can talk about language. I can talk a lot about all the other words, even successful suicide. What is a successful suicide? It is not an achievement.
I think we're out of time though, Pooja. I think we're out of time.
I know. So what I want is to include language in all of these conversations and please diversify. Thank you.
So that's exactly that we should not use, that is exactly there, that we should not use the word commit. But I was just sharing the backstory of how it came into place at first. And the section 115 of Mental Health Act 2017 is my favorite act. I love it. I love it to the core of it. I mean, like in my during my study and my work in jail, and with I worked with Justice Geeta Mittal, Justice Manmohan, Delhi High Court, and Jammu and Kashmir High Court. And now, I've worked with these names to actually work after their life that, ma'am, we have to make a change, and all that stuff. But to come to the end, since we are already over 6, I'll just say 2 lines, and that will summarize the idea of my piggy bank of hopes and today's session. That it's in Hindi, so one language step I'm taking here. सोच को बदलो, सितारे बदल जाएंगे. सॉरी, सोच को बदलो, नजारे बदल जाएंगे. नजर को बदलो, नजारे बदल जाएंगे. कश्तियां बदलने की जरूरत नहीं, दिशाओं को बदलो, किनारे बदल जाएंगे. So that's a small thing. I think it's written by me only. So I am confused like the word. So मेरे को ऐसे एक time पे I thought of this and I wrote it. So I think this is the perfect way to end it. And thank you for a congratulations, successful discussion on this panel. And I think we have got psychological, mental health first aid, mental health first aid view from the accredited instructor point of view, as a taker point of view, as a peer support point of view, as a psychological point of view, from a point of view where how we need to reform the men ideation and reform the men parenting, and and more towards capacity building. There's always time for alternatives, and it's always time for capacity building, and education should not be met with resistance. Every day is learning, and every day is for striving and surviving. So rather not making it just a goal-ended day that, okay, I've done this, let's say I'll survive on these points, and I'll survive forever. So with this, I close the session. Thank you everyone for participating, and it was very, very enlightening session for all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jigyasa. That is a beautiful poem. Very well written, very beautiful. Thank you. And thank you all. And Dr. Kavita, if I may just add that, I don't know, maybe you have gone through the MSFA suicide prevention training as well. We do, thanks for highlighting about the language part. We do talk exclusively about the language. When we start the training, we talk about the language that needs to be corrected, because language is also something that influences our thinking. So we do talk about, why we should not say commit suicide, and why, in various terminologies that we need, that needs correction from our common parlance of usage.
That was Pooja actually, Uma.
Pooja, sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
She's not on the call anymore, so yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kavita. Thank you, Jigyasa.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mama. Thank you.
Thank you, Jigyasa. Sorry, I could not be there totally. I had to keep going out and in. So,
don't worry, ma'am. We have YouTube.
But it was very nice too. Very nice here and there, what I heard. It was very nice. See, I'd really like to have that reference WHO material that ma'am had given.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye, madam.